In today's lesson, we will be writing equations in slope-intercept form. We'll be writing those equations either from a given graph or 2 points. Let's start out by writing an equation of a line in slope-intercept form when we're given a graph. Remember that our slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b, where m stands for the slope and b is the y-intercept. We need to look at each of the graphs and identify what is the slope, what is the y-intercept, and then we'll be able to plug it into the equation in the correct spots. Now some of our lines are good points are going to be highlighted for us, or a couple good points, but that's not always going to be the case, so remember we are just looking for where our line crosses that intersection, so we have nice whole number points. There's lots and lots of points within this line, but there's just nice whole number points that are a little bit easier to find our rise over our run with. So our slope, we need to remember rise over run. So we're going to start out with the leftmost point, and we are going to rise, or in this case fall, and we go 1, 2, 3. So we're going to go down 3. And then we're going to run to the right, so that's a positive direction, and to count 1, 2, 3, 4. So we're going in a +4 direction. Our slope is going to be -3 over a +4. Remember to always reduce that slope if we can. In this case, we can't reduce the slope. We don't want to have a decimal. We want to keep it as a fraction, but we do want to reduce it if possible. Now the next thing that we need to identify is our b, or our y-intercept. Our y-intercept is where the line crosses the y-axis, and here this is where the line crosses the y-axis. Notice in the x spot in the point, it is always going to be 0. Our y-intercept is 0, -2. When we are plugging this into our slope-intercept form, we'll go y equals, here's my slope, -3/4. It's always with my x. And then we'll write our y-intercept. Remember, we are just writing the y value of the point. We can write -2, or we could write plus -2, and that would mean the same thing. There's our equation for our line in slope-intercept form. I bet you guys would be able to pause the video and write the equation for the line for number 2. Alright, so let's identify my slope here. I have, starting at my leftmost point, I'm going to rise 1. That's going to be my top number. And then I'm going to run 1, 2, 3, 4. So I have a slope of +1/4. My y-intercept is 0, 3. And I can see that right there on the y-axis. My equation is y equals 1/4 x plus 3. And it doesn't hurt to always double check your equation, say, oh yeah, that's a positive slope, that's going in a positive direction. Our last one was a negative slope, and it was going in that negative direction. Now let's look at writing an equation of a line when given 2 points instead of a graph. So when we are given 2 points, we obviously don't know what the slope is yet. We need to figure out what the slope is. Remember, I told you guys a couple different ways in order to find the slope. You can make a little XY table in order to find the slope. So I'd go 0, -1, and I'd go 4, -1, and then I'd find my slope. My change in my y is 0. My change in my x is increasing by 4. So my slope would be 0 over 4. I have to remember, oh yeah, 0 divided by 4, that's okay. So I have 0 for my slope. Or I can remember my slope in my slope formula, the y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And so my x1, y1, x2, y2, and I'd plug it in, -1 minus -1. Be really careful that you get both of those negative signs in. And 4 minus 0. Again, we get 0 over 4, which is 0. You do not need to be doing both ways. Hopefully by now you have made a decision on what way is better for you, and you want to stick with that method. Either way, we get a slope of 0, and now the y-intercept, This isn't going to happen in every problems, but for now, in this class, until we move on to algebra, we are going to be given the y-intercept. We just need to look for that 0 in the x spot. And since that is my y-intercept, b equals 0, -1, I can quickly write my equation, y equals 0x, and then don't forget you just need the -1. Now usually we will not see an equation that says 0x in that. This is technically in slope-intercept form, but I would simplify this and just write y equals -1. Notice on this the y values are the same, and so it is a horizontal line of y equals -1. Let's try another one. On this one, I think I will just do the slope formula. But if you like the table, go ahead and do that while I'm doing the slope formula. So I'm going to go 3 minus 5, and then 0 minus -4. Don't forget that negative. 3 minus 5 is -2. 0 plus 4, because I need to add the opposite, is a +4. So I get a slope of -1/2. This time, this guy is my y-intercept, because that has the 0 in the x spot. So my equation is y equals -1/2 x plus 3. How about you guys pause the video and do the last problem on here and make sure that you have a good understanding of this. Alright, since the last one I did the formula for it, this one I'm going to do the table. So I'm going to go 0, 5, 4, 5, and oh, I notice again that there's no change in the y, but there is a change in the x. So my slope is going to be 0/4, which is 0. And then I'm going to look for my y-intercept is 0, 5. And you might even already know right now what your equation would be, because maybe you notice that the y values are the same. And that's great that you are able to notice that. And so we get y equals 0x plus 5, or we know that we should simplify it to be y equals 5. In your summary, be sure you are explaining what you learned about writing a line using slope-intercept form. And then in your question, you have 2 questions. The first one, you're given 2 points. So look back at those last couple examples that we did. And then you have to look at this graph here and also write the equation of the line in slope-intercept form.